When it comes to Pokemon games, you really can't get any better than HeartGold and SoulSilver. These games set the foundation for what we consider to be good Pokemon remakes, improved graphics, quality of life changes, and plenty of new content. And you know, with all the mediocre Pokemon releases over the past few years, I really wanted to dive back into what I consider to be the pinnacle of the series. Now keep in mind, Pokemon has certainly improved in many ways since those days, but it also has regressed in many others. For example, we all love that HMs were removed in Sun and Moon, and that the EXP share was improved in X and Y. But as for the other changes that those games brought, not so much. So in order for me to satisfy my desire for nostalgia, I've been playing through HeartGold over the last few weeks, and let me tell you, that game aged phenomenally. For reference, I've been playing on my modded new Nintendo 3DS, so this isn't really that different from the original experience, but it was actually kind of weird not having the option to fast forward the gameplay like I would do in my emulators. But anyway, let me give you some backstory on what this game means to me. When I was a kid, I was completely in love with the DS. I literally spent hours and hours just playing games on it because I had this little flash cart with some of the best titles on the console. One game I did play a physical copy of though was Pokemon HeartGold. And yeah, I got the game with the little Pokewalker bundle. It was really cool at the time. But this was my first Pokemon game, and wow, what a game to start with. Funny story, when I was picking my starter, I accidentally picked Chikorita when I meant to pick Cyndaquil, but I didn't know that you could restart your game, so I just accepted my fate with the worst starter option. Sorry Chikorita fans. And so I went through this game, and I had a fun time with things like the Pokewalker, and I eventually made my way to the Elite Four, and I went through them. Will was kind of difficult, but nothing my Ho-Oh couldn't handle, cause yeah, I used the legendary back then. Koga was also pretty easy since most of his Pokemon died to fire moves. Bruno was harder than I expected, but I was able to get him down with Togetic and Ho-Oh. And then the last of the Elite Four, Karen, was where I really got a reality check about this game. So first of all, Dark types are weak to Fairy, Bug, and Fighting types, and well, in this game, Fairy types did not exist, and my team had no Bug or Fighting type moves. Honestly, the only reason why I think I beat it was because Ho-Oh and Gyarados are just that overpowered. But anyway, this was the last fight I would be winning, since when I made it to Lance, I truly understood the difficulty of this game sometimes. And if my memory serves me right, and I definitely might be wrong because this playthrough happened when I was like 7, but my team was Meganium, Ho-Oh, Gyarados, Togetic, Sudowoodo, and I think Pidgeot? Not a horrible team, but definitely not the greatest considering how hard it was to level up at the time. So when I faced Lance and had to deal with this broken ass team, I literally quit the game. I mean, could you blame me? It's 3 Dragonites against some little kid. In hindsight, this team definitely could have beaten Lance, but again, I was like 7. I didn't know that ice types were strong against dragon types, so my Gyarados didn't have any ice moves, and all my Pokemon were under-leveled. Interestingly enough though, despite me quitting the game, I always remembered it being one of my favorites in the whole series, if not the best. Even after playing games like Pokemon Fire Red and Pokemon White, I still really loved HeartGold. Perhaps it was the music or the region design, but all I know is that this game made me a Pokemon fan, even though I literally had only played like half of the game. Fast forward over a decade later and I still haven't played through this game fully, so I began my journey playing on my PC with an emulator. Playing it on fast forward, I really do not remember this run at all, and I ended up losing my save right before the Elite Four, so this is not the run I'm basing this video off of. Recently, after modding my 3DS, I decided it was time to finally see if this game was truly as good as I remember, and you know, actually beat the game this time. With this, I couldn't just fast forward through the game and I had to experience it for exactly what it was. So now, instead of just making a video saying things you already know about the game, I'm gonna go ahead and take you on this adventure with me. Oh, and by the way, I wasn't able to capture my own footage during this run, so excuse me if there's any inconsistencies with the gameplay. Starting my adventure, I actually picked Cyndaquil this time, and I went on to face the upcoming gym leaders. Nothing here was too difficult, honestly, and I was just enjoying the experience. I didn't really like any of the Pokemon throughout these first few towns, so I didn't catch anything, but I did go ahead and decide to keep the egg Pokemon, Togepi, who would eventually become a permanent team member. There was also a lot of content that I genuinely didn't care about, like crafting Pokeballs or growing berries, but I think that's just because I just wanted to get through the game a little bit faster. The first real challenge I experienced in this game was, well, you know what, just take a guess. Of course it was Whitney. Honestly, in this game, rollout is just broken. Like, that move is literally unstoppable sometimes. But that actually wasn't even the problem though. The issue was Miltank using Milk Drink over and over again, bro. It was so annoying because I was just getting stalled and it wasn't even doing any damage. I genuinely believe Miltank used every single PP that move had. Regardless, I took it down and continued on to the national park. This area with the music and the setting was just so pleasant to go through as a kid, and I really liked the Pokeathlon next door to this place. The national park was also where I learned how to evolve my Togetic into a Togekiss. Now, unfortunately, it was locked behind a rock climb move which I would not be obtaining for a very, very long time. Before moving on though, I caught the Sudowoodo so I could put some HMs on him, but I didn't really use it much in battle at all. Anyway, I kept going and I reached Ekritique City. Now I love this place, and quite frankly, the music here had me just walking around for no reason instead of actually playing the game. But more importantly, at this point in the adventure, you can kinda pick where you want to go next. The only condition is you have to beat this gym leader here in Ekritique. Now, I'm not very smart, and I completely ignored that there was a gym here in the first place, and I left for Olivine City. Yeah, this is gonna get me pretty annoyed and confused later. Well, anyway, I continued on, and after giving my last 3 Oran berries to these sick Miltanks and ignoring them for the rest of the game, I tackled the lighthouse of Olivine. And, well, around this time, I remember wanting to catch a Mareep so I could use an Ampharos, but I kinda forgot, so the only thing I ended up catching was a Tentacruel so I could use Surf and Whirlpool. I didn't use it in battle really at all though. Oh, but remember how I skipped the Ekritique gym? Yeah, you need to beat it before you can use Surf. And you know what's even better than that? This is right before you can use Fly, so I had to walk all the way back, go to the burned tower, and then face the gym leader of Ekritique City. So I did that and finally used Surf to leave Olivine, and after beating the Cyanwood City gym and getting the medicine for the Lighthouse Ampharos, I went on to defeat the Olivine City gym as well. Next, I went straight for the Lake of Rage to catch the shiny Gyarados who would become a permanent team member for me. I then took on Team Rocket and faced the gym leader of Mahogany Town. But after beating him, I tried to continue on, but I was stopped by this dude telling me he just wouldn't let me through. Well, I was certainly confused about what to do here, but I just googled it and I found out that I had to take care of Team Rocket for good in Goldenrod City. So I took care of business, beat Claire, and again, forgot to get a potential party member in Dratini. I went ahead and picked up Ho-Oh, but I didn't use him at all in this run because that would just be very overpowered. Regardless, I pushed on to Victory Road, which by the way is very easy and quick to get through in this game, and faced the Elite Four. At this point, my team is literally just Gyarados, Typhlosion, and Togetic, and somehow despite only having 3 Pokemon, I was still under-leveled. Not to mention, the only real place you can grind for levels at a somewhat fast rate is the Elite Four, so let's just say I faced them many times before my true final run here. I mean, there's nothing really much to say here besides that I switched my game to set instead of shift because I really wanted a challenge, and honestly, this Elite Four was pretty hard, and I certainly don't blame my younger self for struggling so hard here. But yes, after beating Lance's stupid 3 Dragonites, I beat the game, finally, after over a decade. But of course, this is only half of the experience. I still had to tackle the whole region of Kanto. And you know, this was pretty cool for me. I mean, you don't start in Pallet Town, and you kinda have to reverse engineer your way through the region. Here's the issue though. Upon arriving to Kanto, it just feels strangely boring. Like, it's nice for nostalgia purposes, but to be honest, it feels like we arrived on a Sunday and everything's closed. There's not really any storyline here, and all you're doing is just facing the gym leaders. I mean, technically they had this thing where this Team Rocket member was sabotaging the power plant. I mean, it was kind of funny, but that's not really a storyline. I will say though, it's super cool seeing how the region has evolved since the original Kanto games, especially with places like Cinnabar Island getting huge changes. I literally didn't do anything notable here though, except catch a Snorlax, who would be a permanent team member admittedly. And oh, one more thing, Blue being a gym leader in Viridian was really cool, and his team was actually super good, which makes sense since he was the champion before. One thing that's actually really weird though, where is his Blastoise? Anyway, I beat Blue and went on to Mount Silver to prepare for the final battles. Just for fun, I went to challenge Red on the top of the mountain, and yep, not ready for him yet. Hey, this is Editing Jacob here, and I just wanted to let you guys know how I had a huge section of this video planned to be breaking down a bunch of the battles I had with the Elite Four and Red, but then I realized that it wouldn't really make any sense without my own footage. And for anyone who is looking forward to seeing what happened, well, I actually have plans of revisiting this game in the future, so stay tuned. So for now, let's actually just talk about my opinions of the Gen 2 remakes in general. This game had a lot of ups, but also a couple downs. I think that after playing it, I absolutely still think this is a top 3 great Pokemon game, but it's definitely not without its faults. The number one problem with this game is the awful leveling. At first it's not really that bad, mostly when you're going through the linear part of the game, but bro, after you reach Ecruteak City, nothing makes sense. This problem is only made worse with how extreme the difficulty spikes are despite having little to no genuine places to train after Johto besides the Elite Four. What makes this even worse is that wild Pokemon in Kanto are pretty much useless to train against too because they're so low level. Besides leveling though, and I mentioned this earlier, Kanto feels super dry this time around. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the music here and the gym leaders do actually have a bit of personality, but dang, I wish they put a major storyline here or something. I don't really want to drag on this game too hard though, and I think that more than anything else, this game has charm. From the Japanese inspired music and visuals to the touching evolution of your rival, this game has it all. I mean, think about this, your rival goes from literally being a criminal and after repeatedly losing to you, starts to understand why. He begins to treat his Pokemon better, and even though his team really isn't that great, he still becomes a good trainer. After playing HeartGold, I really missed the passion you used to feel in these Pokemon games, and sure, this game had a few faults and certainly could have benefited from the quality of life changes we have in the newer games, but overall it holds up amazingly well so many years later. I mean, to this day, this game has some things that future games would completely leave out, like walking with your Pokemon. I know a lot of people are upset with the current climate of Pokemon, and honestly, I am too. Even when Game Freak seems to put care into their games with Scarlet and Violet, the actual experience is nowhere near as smooth as it used to be. And I mean, I guess we could put the blame on the sloppy implementation of open world or just the Switch hardware being bad, but I think we all know it's a little bit of corporate greed. Now, if we end up getting Gen 5 remakes in the future, I really hope it even has a fraction of the passion that HeartGold SoulSilver had, because to me, that's one of the biggest factors that goes into making a great Pokemon game. Now, objectively, maybe these games aren't the greatest in the series, and perhaps some people would prefer a lot of the more modern or even retro games. But regardless of your opinion, you cannot deny how impactful this game was, and that's why I think this era of Pokemon was truly the peak of the series.